The question we've got to ask at the end of this meeting is why. But first of all, let's get to the actual crime. You'd have to say that the head of the National Crime Commission is either a liar, a fool, or is at the margins corrupt. There's no other explanation. In his evidence before the Joint Parliamentary Committee, he very carefully referred to the Trio collapse. Don't ever allow anyone, be a police officer, a member of ASIC, a politician, to ever again use the word collapse. It implies that somehow something went wrong financially in the marketplace. He deliberately did not use the word the Trio crime. He's a police officer. That's his job. Trio didn't collapse. Trio did exactly what it was designed to do. It was designed to defeat the Australian regulatory system, and it did. Very, very successfully. The way it did it was it complied with every requirement of the Australian regulatory system. You know who owned Trio? Does anyone know the owners of Trio? We've been through a joint parliamentary committee. We've been through, apparently, now, 3 years of investigation by Australia's finest, smartest financial regulators and investigators. To this day, I would suggest, the people who had their money stolen still haven't been told in clear, precise terms that you would expect of a police officer the names of the people who stole your money. And the names are here. They're not a secret. It's not hard to work out when you know how they did it. It's like watching a magician. They pull a rabbit out of a hat and you think, how did they do that? But when you know how the trick is done, there's no mystery or magic. It's just a commonplace trick. These people weren't particularly smart. The question is, were these people brilliant, or are our regulators not particularly clever? The answer's in here, and I will try and give you some of that information now. Okay. Who owned Trio? Simple. Trio was originally a trust fund in Australia named Huntley. It was bought under normal circumstances, and there was the original owner died. We won't go through that. I don't want to confuse you with a whole lot of names because there's a lot of people involved. The ownership passed to a person by the name of Jack Flarder. Flarder, as we've already said at previous meetings, has a conviction in the United States for financial fraud. He's no longer capable of operating in the United States, so bases his companies in jurisdictions which have very, very weak regulators. Some of these jurisdictions find it difficult to have a police force. St Lucia, Cook Islands, Virgin Islands, they don't have financial regulators. They're struggling to have traffic cops. Wonderful places to base your company. However, Trio was issued with a licence. Had to be. Who issued the licence? The Australian Prudential Regulatory Authority. They got that licence in 2004 when Sean Richard was on the board of Trio. Anyone do any checks? Anyone look into the past? Anyone think, well, maybe before this licence is issued, we'll have a look at the ownership structure and we'll have a look at who they are? If you went to get a licence, a gun licence, a fishing licence, a driving licence in New South Wales, you'd have to pass a more stringent test. They get their licence and then they appoint a board. Sean Richards steps off the board of Trio. APRA in the Joint Parliamentary Committee tried to gild the lily. They put a bit of a gloss on their performance by saying that Sean Richard stepped off the board of Trio because they'd advised him to. That's not Sean Richard's evidence, not even close. And by the way, Richard was trying to save himself. He was trying to say, hey, I'm not really such a bad person, I'll tell you everything. I'll make it as good as it looks for you. He didn't say that. He said they were advised by good legal advice that it didn't look good for Sean Richard, a representative of the owner, Flata, in Hong Kong, to also be the CEO of a new hedge fund that they'd established under Trio called the Star Strategic Fund, ASF, where your money went. He was advised by Clarissa Villavert. I'm going to come back to that name later. Don't forget it. It's an important name. ASF is a small hedge fund, hasn't got a lot of employees, doesn't have to, because it's a funnel through which the money will be forced. It will market financial products to people like you, and it will look pretty good, as it did. This crime was designed to defeat the very weak Australian regulatory system, and it was also designed not to draw attention to itself. 10% return as a hedge fund in 2007. There are about 600 hedge funds registered in Australia. Some of them in that year returned returns of 30%. Too suspicious. 30% return, well, could be a Ponzi scheme. As we know, a Ponzi scheme is a scheme whereby the money which is contributed in, part of that is paid out as a dividend without the money being invested, and the receipts keep people happy for a while. Bernie Madoff ran the most successful Ponzi scheme in the world. He's now doing about 300 years jail in America. So they were clever. 10%, not 30, just enough to make it look like you were doing okay. Now, they appointed, and it gets very complicated, and I don't want to bore people here with the complications of this. They appointed a manager, an investment manager for ASF. They've got a legal one. Sean Richard very proudly in his investigation says, we had a legal compliance officer in ASF, and she knew about the Australian system, and she advised us. This is in his first investigation when he was telling ASIC he was innocent. She advised us on what to do. Name's Clarissa Villavert. He was quite proud of that, I think. Well, Clarissa Villavert worked for APRA for 7 years before she worked for ASF. Now, if I'd have been asking Sean Richard, I'm not a police officer, I'm not qualified like these guys, these are the brightest and the best we have in this country. When he said Clarissa Villavert worked for the predecessor of APRA for 7 years, and she advised us on how to do this stuff, I would have asked some more questions about Clarissa Villavert. Not one question from the ASIC investigators, not one question more about Clarissa Villavert. Is it just possible that Villavert used the contacts she had in APRA? Is it just possible she had conversations with our fine regulators in APRA. Well, we want to know. And with John, we've sent out a request for a Freedom of Information application to APRA, where we've asked for information about Clarissa Villaverde. Well, they're not going to give it to us. We're going to have to go to court to get their notes, their records, their diaries, their minutes of meetings, their emails. Don't you think that with a crime of $168 million, that the financial policeman would say, we think that Clarissa Villaverde is a legitimate line of inquiry? Don't you think that the head of APRA, when that person appeared before the Joint Parliamentary Committee, which is the investigation of the people of Australia through the Parliament, that he might have just mentioned, even in passing, I would accept, even in passing, to that committee, oh, by the way, a former employer of the prudential regulator who had 7 years working experience in our organisation was the legal compliance officer of ASF. Don't you think so?
Yep.
No. I don't know. Maybe I'm naive. And they said not one word. I reckon we could go out and question anyone in the street out there and say, listen, someone's stolen your money and they have a really good contact in the police force and the police force is not going to chase the crook. Most people would say, oh, that's because they've got a really good friend in the police force. Well, probably.